guys, and welcome back to Betwixt the Books. We are here with another reading roundtable. Technically, this is meant to be our June reading roundtable, although I think it is coming out like a couple days into July. Shh, don't worry about it. It's fine. The last like 3 have been pushed a little bit. It's fine. It's fine.
A little bit. There was one that was pushed for like a month and a half.
Shh, don't worry about it. That's what I just said. If you have never been to one of these before, Gretchen and I have a YouTube channel where we talk about books. This is a monthly, usually, thing where we bring on some of our bookish friends to just talk about the things that we've been reading recently. Sometimes there is a theme where we give a loose theme that people can bring a topic, whatever, bring a book to. This time it's not one of those times. It is unthemed chaos, so we just get to hear about what our friends have been reading, which sometimes is more fun than the theme, because we get to hear about stuff we never would have thought to look up or see or whatever. We always go around, introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about what we normally read, so that you can get an idea about which one of us you might align with when it comes to reading taste, and then we will go around again and talk about what it is that we've been reading. So yeah, this will be a long one. Sit down, go get something to drink, maybe put us on a second monitor, and do some work while we prattle on about books. As always, let's start with Gretchen.
Hi, I'm Gretchen. You may not know this because I so rarely appear on the channel these days. I have just not been reading. I haven't been interested in reading anything. However, one of the things that was pushing me to kind of like do some reading, I could have gone the easy route and go with my normal romance thing. I'm normally on here reading a lot of contemporary romance. Every once in a while I do a historical fiction or maybe a romantasy. And then the other half of me is the one that reviews things like true crime and a lot of nonfiction, usually historical or political science. And obviously it's the 250th coming, or by the time this is posted maybe happened, I'm not quite sure, but I've really wanted to do some videos about good history nonfiction that people could read kind of like in connection with the 250th. And so I did actually get to like, I read some of those books, and actually that video is live right now. It's called Revisiting the Revolution. And so it's different books that you can read that will teach you things about the American Revolution that you never learned about in school. And there was one book that I read for that didn't end up factoring as big into the video that I want to talk about here, because it was one of those books that in my reading slump right now, I was like, it's like 800 pages. It's really long. I was like, oh God, this is going to be a slog. And I just like raced through the audiobook. I really enjoyed it. And I didn't expect that. So I want to tell you more about it since I didn't really get to in that video. So I will be doing history nonfiction today.
My name is Anne, and I know these wonderful people. I know Gretchen and Erica because we all worked through COVID at a small library in Massachusetts, which was a blast. Those were good times. And Michaela, I've met through Gretchen and fundamentally through doing these reading roundtables. I always walk away with something, just personally, with something like I didn't even know that was a thing. Suddenly I'm off going like, huh. So, we all get our book education about books. This is a great place to do that, because people will prattle, as Michaela said, about just about anything that you've never heard of. Mm-hmm. I usually, like Gretchen, I think it started in COVID, but sort of contemporary romances became sort of like the thing that you could read to as a go-to. And as you'll discover today, apparently, it's not COVID, but apparently I'm needing to have the romances sort of, central, because I'm going like, well, I could list like 27, and I'm going like, no, don't do that. But I've been reading and not reading. A lot of it's been audio, so I can truly empathize with Gretchen and just not being able to like, it's almost like physically hold a book. It's just not there. But I've been, aside from that, I will read and look through all sorts of cookbooks and pottery books and everything, anything that looks pretty. Mm-hmm. I will pretty much like a magpie. I'll bring it home, hence almost 50 books from the library, we always wondered about those people. Well, I'm becoming one. And I will also have been reading I have no particular reason why, but I've got a book written by someone who passed away from cancer. So I will share, some sort of highlights from some of those readings. Not the cookbooks, though. They're pretty easy. They're big. You find them in the library. You bring them home. You probably don't use them. You guys all know that.
Hi, I'm Erica. I am in the same boat as Anne and Gretchen of my brain just decided to stop reading books at the beginning of this year. So I got into a big hyperfixation with a lifelong love of mine, which is manga. And I invite our lovely hosts and my fellow guest to consider what you guys like to read, because I would be happy to be a sommelier of some manga for you, because I have been reading so much. And honestly, the best part of reading a bunch of manga is that as soon as you finish one, you bring it back, you put a hold on it at the library, and every day you get a new present. And it's wonderful. But I have been reading just a boatload of manga. I've been slowly eking my way through a couple of books here and there, a couple of real books here and there. I am 40 minutes away from completing this Marie Antoinette biography that I've been listening to for like months now. And Gretchen's laughing because she knows that I've been working on this for a while, because I was reading The Rose of Versailles, which is, very scientific historical fiction. It's not, but mostly it's been manga. So I'm going to be talking about manga tonight because that is my big hyperfixation for the last several months.
And then, hi, I'm Michaela. You've seen me around. I've been on here. Normally, you will hear me talking about horror books, queer books, sci-fi books. Has been what I've been reading for the most part lately. I noticed an interesting trend where the last 4 or 5 books that I read this year were sci-fi based. But because this was technically our June roundtable, I'm bringing a queer horror novella that I absolutely adored and gave 5 stars, but its rating on Goodreads is less than a 3-star overall. So I want to talk about that because that was actually shocking to me of how many people dislike this book. So I'm going to be talking about that, which is not outside of my normal zone. It's, the pride reading in here, but it trigger warnings for mine, which I'll talk about again because it's about suicide. So I will have that there as well. So if that's something that you don't want to hear talked about, skip mine. If you're cool with me talking about that, I'm going to talk about it. But not till the end. First, we'll start with Gretchen. Get some history in.
Class is in session. So, again, one of the things that I wanted to do, as someone getting their PhD and focusing on elementary social studies, a lot of the things that I'm interested in are how to make history come alive. And I mean, you look at things like Hamilton and stuff like that, particularly about the American Revolutionary era. There are many, many different ways to do that. For children, this book is not for children, but it was just kind of what I wanted to do for that video that I just posted was different ways to think about the revolution versus the story that we just get told in school. And the reason that this book that I'm going to talk about didn't make I mentioned it in the video, but it didn't necessarily fit the theme of really reframing how we think about the revolution, is because it is telling the story that we all kind of know, but it is telling it in the most minute detail possible. So the book that I'm going to talk about today is technically the second in a series. It's called The Fate of the Day, The War for America, Fort Ticonderoga to Charleston, 1777 to 1780. And why that is important is because, again, this covers 3 years of the war, 1777 to 1780. That's 3 years, right? Never do math in public. And this book is 880 pages. It is the second book in a series. The first book I also read and I've also reviewed on the channel in my American Presidents Reading Challenge series. The British Are Coming, The War for America, Lexington to Princeton, 1775 to 1777. So again, that was 2 years of the war, and that one was 776 pages. Okay. So when I tell you that these books are going to tell you about everything, it's like the most minute detail that you can get down to and still tell a coherent narrative, right? Because there has to be a way to kind of like move through the books. And so, yes, obviously you get the stories of your major players like George Washington, that type of thing. But then you also hear from like stories woven together from primary sources of regular soldiers. In this one in particular, it also went abroad. So it also went more into detail into the situation both in Britain that begins to affect the changes that happen during these 3 years about the American Revolution, and also what is the context in France that brings them into the war. Because everybody's always like, oh yeah, they won the Battle of Saratoga, and then the French were like, yeah, you're legit now, and so we're coming over. And like, that's not how that happened. Does that act as a catalyst? Yes, but there's like so much more going on. And also I think this book does do a good job also of bringing in things like the British preoccupation with their sugar islands and the things that are happening down there, which again we rarely ever talk about. But like at first Britain is like, we're gonna send all of our troops to America and they're gonna crush these yokels, and then like we're just gonna go back to our business, right? And then after the first 2 years of the war, which are covered in the first couple, the first book, Britain's like, why are we still here? How have we not beaten these people yet? And then they have to start making decisions about, do we keep all of our troops in the American colonies, or do we start saying maybe we'll give up this like very problematic couple of areas, and we'll send these troops down to the Sugar Islands, which are in the Caribbean, and they're more profitable and also easier to control. So I was very worried about starting the second book in the way that I'm feeling right now, because I was like, it's 880 pages. Like, there's no way, if I cannot currently consume like a regular 300-page romance novel, which you could just, kind of go like this through, right? How am I going to sit through and I forget what the hours were, but it's like basically a 30-hour audiobook or something, which is how I listened to it. Now, an important piece of context is that I also listened to the first one on audio, and the first one actually won an Audie Award for audio book narration. And it's not because it's full cast, it's not because it's but like, I will say there was something about the audiobook narration of the first one as well, where I was like, this is very detailed and very long, but I'm like super into it. And I'm still not exactly sure what it is about the audiobook narrator that they have, which is so engaging, because I wouldn't say that he's doing necessarily anything different, right? He's not like, acting, it's not like he's reading a nonfiction book, but it's also got to be some, like, the way the audiobook narrator is just very engaging, plus the way that it's written is very engaging, so he's got good material to work with. That just like, I'm like, yeah, tell me more. And so I was like, well, you know what? Maybe the second book will also be like that, so I'll just start it. And it was. It was like really engaging, and it was just like a very, very long podcast that I just like, I didn't want to turn off. And I think there are some issues when you take a book that's this long and filled with this many characters in audiobook form. You don't have like pages for reference, like who is this character? Where are we? This is obviously moving forward narratively in time, but of course when they go to like Britain or they go to France, they have to back up a little bit to like kind of tell you, okay, so while this was happening, this was happening. I was never confused. I never felt like I didn't know who some of the characters were. So I think it's just like a real credit to the writing that's just like really, really good and really engaging. And I was also thinking about how like I've reviewed a couple of books by Eric Larson on the channel, and I think that he's considered one of like the premier writers of like history nonfiction, and I don't like his work. And some of the reasons have been because I feel like it's just bogged down in too many of the little details. And so then I was like, okay, so what makes this different from this? And I think one of the things is that I feel like Erik Larson has a lot of details in his book, but I feel like Rick Atkinson is really, really good at keeping like the human beings, the characters at the center. And so, yeah, there's a lot of details and stuff, but it's all like about illuminating the human experience and what they're going through. Whereas I feel like, at least in the Erik Larson books that I've read, and I've read 2 or 3, I just feel like they're actually bogged down in like the details. And I'm like, I don't need like 5 pages of you describing like the scenery of this place. I don't care. Because I like when I think history comes alive through the people. That's just my personal opinion. Obviously, other people could really, really want that historical detail of like scenery or a contraption or something. I don't care. And again, not to say that Rick Atkinson doesn't do it, but I think that I felt like a really human story where even if you only met this person for like this one instance where their diary or something is being used to kind of put the story of, say, Valley Forge together or something, it just felt very atmospheric about the human experience, not focused on like the other details. So yeah, I would really, I know that because of the length, the 3rd book's not even out yet. I mean, spoilers. How does the American Revolution end? We can't possibly guess. I don't know how long it will take him to get that 3rd book out, so it's definitely not like finished. And I know that the length will definitely put a lot of people off, but if you are into this type of history, I think that even though they are, door stoppers, they're just so well done. And it's one of the only books that I've finished recently. And it feels like on paper that should not make sense. Like, no, I can't read romances, but I finished a 900-page history book. So yeah, I wanted to be able to talk about that a little bit more than I did in that video, because I think I just said like they're really good, I highly recommend them, but they weren't doing some of the same like reorienting work I thought that some of those other books were doing, so I didn't focus on it as much, but wanted people to know about it. I mean, they won awards. The first book was in the Goodreads Choice Awards. It's not like they're like niche in as much as history nonfiction isn't niche. But yeah, I just want to talk about them because it made me happy. It's one of the only books that I finished recently, and they're really good. So if anyone is interested in this weird thing that I'm also interested in, it's definitely worth your time.
I also think it's worthwhile when you hear, one of the people talk about a book. Like when Gretchen says something is interesting, I mean, you don't have to read the 800 pages. You can just, go and try it. I mean, you really can just try out books and you might discover that, oh, I see what she means. And then you can still say, but I really don't want to keep going. But it's just fun to get exposed to, the things that's excited someone. And that's how I've gotten, literally lost in entire books that I'm like, again, I had no idea. I don't think I've ever picked up certainly not a history book with like 800 pages to cover 3 years. I'm going like, oh my God, that sounds miserable. Like why? But I will go try it because of your description. I also think history comes alive. History comes alive through fiction, because it humanizes a part of something. And if there's somehow in the writing of this that the characters and the details somehow mesh together as opposed to being, just here's a recitation of the 2,000 details that went along with this that we found everywhere. Again, I don't know what the mixture is, but there's something about it that sounds really appealing to me. So I'll go pick it up.
For me too, like there is like a version of this that's not 800 pages, which is Nathaniel Philbrick's trilogy. Is I think one of the most well-known ones. It's like a trilogy that covers the same span of time, and they're all like this big, right? Like regular size books. But my issue with but the thing about those is that then you're gonna get the story of George Washington. You're gonna get the story of, and I'm like, okay, not only do I feel like I know that story, because as I also figured, like for 250 years at this point for this challenge, I've read basically 250 books that can be categorized in my American presidents / American history like wheelhouse. But it's like, okay, I know that story, and I also know that like George Washington didn't do it alone, right? And that's what I think is the benefit of a book that takes this deep of a view, is to meet some of the like other people besides just, and here's George again. It's like, okay, thank you.
It's good to hear too that the characters were easy to keep in mind. I've been finding that like with the Marie Antoinette book, and I think this is also hindered by names being from different languages, that like I've had a lot of moments where I'm just like, wait, no, I want to like flip back and see when was this person mentioned. And so this is kind of like listening to the Marie Antoinette book. I'm kind of like, I maybe I should just like read nonfiction on paper so that I can flip back. And I have not listened to as much nonfiction as you have.
No one should.
Very high bar to clear. But I am curious as to if it's a facet of the author or if it's a facet of the, the French, German, occasionally Swedish names versus more American, British names.
I mean, and also like a lot of the names that come up are names that I know.
Yeah.
Because I've read enough about this.
Yeah.
Like I had that same issue when I read like an 800 pager on the Russian Romanov dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
Because as many 90s kids were wont to do, we were obsessed with the animated Anastasia movie. And I actually like that was one where, because I've talked about this all the time in my videos, nonfiction on audio is a high bar to clear, like it because of that. But that was one where I own that book now, because I started listening to the audiobook and I went, nope,
not happening.
Nope. Yeah. No, if I don't have the print book in front of me, we're not getting through. And again, that was like 800 pages on the entire Romanov dynasty, so you're trucking through history really quickly. But I was just I have no idea who. Well, and of course in like the royal families, like 15 of them are named Louis. And you're like, which Louis is this? And then I make you my case for my 880 pages. But yes, I agree that sometimes I have to make this case a lot, that reading like nonfiction on audio is a choice.
We've talked about how you don't like fiction on audio and you almost exclusively read nonfiction on audio, and I'm the opposite, where I can't do exclusively audio nonfiction and I love fiction on audio. Granted, I do both tandem reading for both most of the time, but yeah, we've talked about that. Like, some people just can't do one or the other, and it totally makes sense. I get it.
But anyway, that's my book. I went on for a while, but I love it. And now we can leave behind the American Revolution. And Anne can take us somewhere nicer.
As much as we can, anyways, going into July.
Yes, this particular moment of history. Yeah, I don't think I touched the American Revolution in anything I've read since January, or probably really hugely ever since American history classes in high school, Gretchen. So thank you for making up for my lack of. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Wait, I got to do the Richard Nixon.
Oh, excellent. As I said, I've been, I think in some ways, sort of escaping into books, and sort of, if it catches my interest long enough, I'll keep at it. And I haven't come across any gems. Like, I sometimes will come here and I started reading something, usually when Gretchen or Michaela give us one of those vague assignments, and I go down and I'm going like, I never knew. I found another favorite book. um, and then I'm all excited. This time I was just doing the sort of, cruising through stuff and picking up stuff, and some of it was fascinating, but a lot of it just, I think, fundamentally seems to be distractions, and they're sort of romance and romantasy, I think, are the first three that I'll just run through. But as I said, I had listened somewhere since January to an audiobook by B.K. Borison, which was sort of I don't know, sort of a psychic, sort of a spiritual, sort of a, otherworldly romance with a human. And, it was, I go, that's cool. And so I saw her name popped across the Libby read, and I'm like, sure, I'll try this. Oh, it's the second in a series. That's fine. But this is a series of two books. A third one is apparently coming out sometime in 27, and they're all set against a backdrop of two independent, one's an independent radio station, and one's an independent TV station, and they share a parking lot. So, the people cross paths, as you can imagine, in the romance universe. That's just how things happen. And yeah, it's, and there's evil overlords want to take over the independent, there's the all the stuff you can imagine with independent, media outlets. And the second book, or the first book that I read, was the second in the series, and that's called And Now Back to You. And it's sort of an enemy-ish to lovers sort of romance or trope. And it's, they're sent, of course, to cover a snowstorm together, even though they're enemy-ish. And of course, there's only one bed. Mm-hmm. Unless you want to stay in the place with the I don't know what they were. They never identified what the animals were in the place. And of course, there's the TV station. There are two meteorologists, and one's at the radio station, one's at the TV station. And I think it's the TV station's manager hates his meteorologist, I think, fundamentally because she's more popular. It's there's nothing about this book that is, particularly new, but it's well written. I appreciated that the character, the radio meteorologist, is a little bit neurodivergent. He doesn't talk well, so he scripts everything out. And of course, when you're covering a snowstorm and you discover that everything goes really well and easy, and you don't drift on about, talk forever about snow phenomenon or rain phenomenon when left to your own devices. So it was just a pleasant book, and it's a romance book, everyone. They always end well. I'm sure there are some that don't, but most of them do. If it's got that sort of in the title, it's like a cozy mystery. It's gonna end well. And I like her. She's it's an enjoyable read. I then went on to look at, did the first book, and that's set between, so basically Sleepless in Seattle is the first one, or a copy of Sleepless in Seattle. It's called First Time Caller. The radio host is, of course, down on love, but he's has the love hour or hours on the radio station. A little girl calls in, or a young, probably preteen, calls in, and of course is looking for, how do I get a boyfriend for my mom? The Sleepless in Seattle details. But again, it was really easy. The reading is easy. B.K. Borison, the characters are, they're easy to latch onto. Yeah, your time is going to pass. If you've got to drive either from here to New York City or here to Boston, it's great to throw this on because the turnpike will disappear into your rear view mirror, and you will have finished a book by the time you get from one or the other location. So again, nice characters. I liked the narrators were both good. I liked it actually in the second book better. But again, that's true with audiobooks, which if you've experienced audiobooks, you'll find some narrators that are just phenomenal. And these are two narrators, the female character had a narrator and the male character had a narrator. So yeah, it was nice, you know, and nice is sometimes enough. As someone once told me, it's like just nice is good. We sometimes need that. The other sort of, again, the third book that I had mentioned was it's called The Charmed Library, which is a little bit sci-fi, but more fantasy. It's more like a romance fantasy, I think, is the category that I would put it in. And it's by an author called Jennifer Moorman. Came out in 2026. BK Borison's books are also 26, 27, 25, 26, 27. So recent ones. They should still be on your new bookshelf in whatever library you walk into. And The Charmed Library is set in a library, which, appeals to some of us for probably not very good reasons, but it works. It works. But this is sort of fundamentally, it's a fantasy library because, unbeknownst to the main character Stella, the the words have power and they can sort of jump off pages, and that's what she sort of starts seeing is the pages, books or ideas start coming and sliding and whatnot. And eventually, you know, it, characters also seem to jump off the pages, and the older librarian who runs the library is in the know of these things, but Stella doesn't. So you sort of discover things along with her. And it was just fun. I really looked forward to figuring out what the hell is going on in this library. Why is it wasn't Marie Antoinette Erica, but it was that sort of, fundamentally literary character that everybody knows, and others as well. And, Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn are, sneaking around the library at night. And the librarian, of course, the person that she has loved since her childhood days, a fictional character, of course, jumps off the pages, and then the book sort of follows that and resolves that story. Again, it was just fun. I was grateful to be curious enough to actually finish it, because you can just sort of start these things. There's nothing hugely compelling, but it was fun enough and well enough written by Moorman that it makes going on, and certainly listening was good. Again, and the narrators were good. Actually, no, this one wasn't. This wasn't a listening one. This isn't in audio, so I apologize. I did actually read a book. Ha! I correct myself, people, which is something, if you don't know, librarians and others do all the time. And if they don't invite them to coffee. So I did read this. I think this was a going to bed book, and I'd fall asleep with it, and then I'd do it again the next night. It took a while, so I'm impressed with those of you that are getting through books. As I said, I also read. I will look at books happily and bring them home. But the last book I just wanted to mention, because I ended up sort of fiction and nonfiction, sort of ended up going down, or just somehow ended up picking books that had to do with the ends of people's lives. But the one that I just wanted to mention to all of you is a nonfiction book called Unwinding of a Miracle, which is written by Julie Yip-Williams. And it's basically a chronicle of her dying from cancer. And it was one of those books that I don't exactly know where it crossed my path. I probably thought The Unwinding of a Miracle, and it probably mentioned on the cover that it's a memorial of some sort. And somehow I picked it up, and it made me sort of pause in all the things that we think about. And she's she's not I'm folding in my life. She's very honest and very fierce about it, and apparently lived life that way. But it was extraordinary. It was extraordinarily well written. It was closed off with a letter from her more shy husband because she asked him to. And I would highly recommend it. It makes you think about, I mean, maybe it's just because I'm at the age where a lot of people seem to be, passing and whatnot. And this was just a completely different look at something that people say, well, it's all the things that people say, you go, yeah, it's not exactly, it's not easy. It's not just you'll get through it. You don't really understand what this is like. And so I would highly recommend it. I don't know that I can say anything else, but it was, even though it's sad, it was really sort of life affirming in the end, which is something that can sometimes happen when you explore, people talking about the ends of their lives. And she actually starts out, if you're reading this, I'm no longer here. And I thought that was pretty cool.
And if you want to have all of Anne's experiences in one movie, you can go to Netflix and watch Voicemails from Isabel, which is what I did last night.
I'm laughing very hard because somebody was just talking about this at work.
Voicemails from Isabel. Well, thank you so much. I know what I'm doing tonight. I don't know about you guys.
I was like crying last night because it's technically a romantic comedy, but the female lead is played by Zoe Deutsch, who I love as an actress.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately for her, she does the female lead in a rom-com so well. She's kind of been, I think, stuck there. She's done a couple for Netflix now. Another one is Set It Up. But she plays a woman whose sister dies of cancer. And that she starts leaving her voicemails after she's gone, and that number is reassigned to someone, a dude who like falls in love with her through the voicemails. It was really funny. Was like I'm like crying last night because Zoe does such a good job with this role and like taking us through like the amount of grief and like stuff like that. The male lead is kind of a little bit cardboardy for me, but that's fine. I can't wait for Zoe. And then I was trying to explain it to John afterwards. Yeah, I was trying to explain it to John afterward, and he was like, "Yeah, so this would be a post that I would see on Reddit that would end in a felony."
just like one of those deceptively simple titles of like am I the jerk for listening to her voicemails or like something like that?
Exactly.
Like, and then like you read it and you're just like, oh no, this person's a psychopath.
Yes. And I was like, unfortunately, that's a lot of romance. Is like, do not like this in real life, but it works here.
Right.
But anyway, so when you were like, yeah, there's romance and there's cancer, I was like, do I have a movie for you?
Excellent. I really appreciate it. I don't think Jerome's going to watch it with me, but...
Yeah, John didn't either. John was...
Yeah.
Okay, so I have been, like I said, I've been reading a bunch of manga. I think it started because I got really into watching... I've loved One Piece for a long time. The new live-action season for that came out fairly recently. And just kind of like around that time, I think my love for One Piece kind of re-sparked, and I've been watching a bunch of Danny Mata reactions on YouTube, and he has a podcast where he's talking about anime, and it just got me watching some of the stuff that they were watching, and so I've just kind of like, I started kind of small, and then it just kind of grew and grew and grew, because like I was doing a show, and one of the folks at the show recommended I read 20th Century Boys by Naoki Urasawa, and it's phenomenal. It's incredible. It's like a thriller with like a touch of supernatural. It's a little bit reminiscent of like Stephen King books and stuff like that. So I was reading that one. I was watching the new series of Gachi Akada, the dub, incredible. And so I picked up that manga, started reading that manga, because I hope to get ahead for when the next season comes out eventually. It's awesome. It's very punk. It's very like trash punk, if that's like a thing. And then from there, just kind of spiraled out of control. My sister's been recommending Apothecary Diaries to me for a while. And I picked that up. I've been reading the light novel for that actually. It's not quite my speed. It's more of like a imperial Chinese mystery sort of vibe, and the kind of episodic nature of the light novel doesn't hold me as much. And it was very interesting to compare it to reading the light novel for another series called Bungo Stray Dogs. Bungo Stray Dogs is one that is very silly, and this is one that I was watching because Danny Mata was reacting to the anime for it. So I picked up the manga for it so that I could watch along with the anime, because I am the kind of person who, my little ADHD brain needs to read the book first. It doesn't matter what it is. I need to read the primary source material first. So that's a large part of why I've been picking up all of these manga. And so I've been reading Bungo Stray Dogs, and Bungo Stray Dogs is fun because it is a whole bunch of characters that are named after authors. And they match their nationality, so it's mostly in Japan, so it's mostly Japanese authors. And, it's kind of one of those moments of like, oh, there are so many authors I do not know, and like one of them's like one of the biggest Japanese authors of all time. It's fine. But they all also have magic powers. The characters are not actually like based on the authors. I think that that's important to know. They're mostly just named after them and kind of like a little bit inspired by them. So I'm in the fun arc now where the American people have started showing up. The American gang has started showing up, led by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And so Lovecraft and John Steinbeck are in there trying to fight people. And like Lovecraft's got like scary tentacle powers, and John Steinbeck will plant a seed in his neck and grow plants because it's grapes of wrath.
Yeah, sure.
There's also Margaret Mitchell, there's Nathaniel Hawthorne, and it's a very silly show and series. One that is much less silly, because I've been trying to go back and do some of the classics, hence why I was reading Rose of Versailles, a classic 1970s manga about one female guard officer just giving the entire French court bisexual panic. That's the plot. And also Marie Antoinette's there, and there's like some romance. It didn't really catch me until book 4 out of 5. But it's fun to go back and read some of the kind of progenitors of manga, because I've also been reading some Osamu Tezuka, who is the author of Astro Boy, which is often seen as like the original manga. And just also to clarify that manga means any comic that comes from Japan. It's not necessarily a specific style or anything like that. It's just, we call them comics, they call them manga, that's it. And same with anime. We call them cartoons, they call them anime, that's it. So I read some Osamu Tezuka. I read Princess Knight, which is both very progressive and not at all progressive, because it's about a princess who was born, she was supposed to be born a princess, but and everybody has the heart of a boy or a girl, and she, because there was some little prankster angel up there, she was born with the heart of both. So if she's dressed in male garb, she's like sword slinging warrior. If she's in female garb, she's princess mode. And like, it's cool because she can fluctuate between the two, and that's really neat. But what's less cool is that she's like, oh, I'm in a dress right now, I can't fight. And it's like, you're so close. And Tezuka clearly has like great respect for women, because there's a lot of like female sort of like power and stuff that's in the rest of the manga. It's very cartoony. Something that was interesting to me in reading it is that in reading Tezuka, I'm also reading his series on Buddha now, where he just kind of recaps the life of Buddha. In reading Tezuka, you can very clearly see the Western animation influences. You can see like Betty Boop. You can see, my brain went like Bendy and the Ink Machine, and I'm just like, that's not it. That ain't it. But what that was based on, which is Fleischman Studios, Disney, those early rubber hose animations, you can see the influence extremely clearly in Tezuka. And then you can draw kind of a straight line from there to Rose of Versailles. And then from Rose of Versailles, you can draw a line to all of the styles of today, or like a lot of them anyways, especially like the shoujo ones. I will definitely admit I have a bias for shonen. I have a bias for the action, adventure, fantasy, of shonen, which is the demographic of teenage boys. I've also been reading a few seinen manga in there as well. I read a bit of Fist of the North Star, which is another 70s, 80s classic, very influential on a lot of different fighting anime and manga. It's like post-apocalyptic and everything like that. I was hungering for a plot, so I switched to something else. So the main seinen that I've been reading is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Huge name today and still going, has been going since the 80s. I believe this is actually a seinen, but the biggest one that I have to recommend to people, and I think everybody in this chat here will probably like this, and if you have other tastes and you are interested in trying manga, let me know. I am super interested in recommending things because I've done like so much hyperfixation deep dives on manga lately that so my current like real kind of peak media right now is Witch Hat Atelier. It just got an anime, so the world's been introduced to it a lot that way. It's by Kamome Shirahama. I believe this author has also done drawings for like Marvel and stuff before. But what starts out as a cozy fantasy adventure about a young girl learning how to use magic to help her mother, who was kind of frozen in a sort of magic gone wrong incident. What starts off as a cozy, like, oh, this is nice, she's just getting to learn these things, it gets so stressful so fast. But it's written so artfully. Every page is beautiful, and every character arc, every character decision is just perfect because nobody is good or bad. Everybody has their own reasons why they're doing things in this world. The premise is that the world of magic that they're in is a world where anybody can do magic, which means that it's been now limited to a very select number of people so that horrors and atrocities that were committed in the past are not committed again. And magic is done by using a specific kind of ink, and that's the only limitation that there is. You have to draw certain sigils and things like that, but anybody can pick up a pen and learn how to do it. So they've had to start imposing very strict rules as to who can and can't do magic. And it creates all of these incredibly interesting conversations around fascism and control, around ableism and inclusivity, and being able to help people, breaking the rules to make sure that people can be healed or saved or things like that, or just finding creative solutions to be able to do those sorts of things within that certain rule set. And it's told from the point of view of like the main character is a young girl, and it's so good. It's so good. The only con of it so far is that the arc that we're in currently, where the English manga has been translated to, is dragging on a teensy bit. But I think it's wrapping up. I'm guessing it's probably going to wrap up in the next volume or two. The anime is incredible. It's some of the smoothest, most gorgeous animation that I've ever seen in anime. And the music is wonderful. The music is by the same composer of Bloodborne, which, if that doesn't tell you that this gets stressful, it does. And like it takes a little bit. It takes a little bit, and there's like some kind of exciting adventures in the first part that are like a little bit stressful. But then like by the end of season 1, with where the anime's at right now, that's just like a sneak peek of how stressful it gets. So I strongly recommend Witch Hat Atelier to this group, especially because I think it has a little bit of something. It's very cerebral, it's very thinky, it's very gorgeous, it's very tense, and it's incredibly wonderful. One other one that I wanted to touch on when I was talking about history stuff is Barefoot Gen, and that is one that was written in the 60s by a survivor of the Hiroshima bombing. And when I've told people about it in the past, I've kind of equated it to the Japanese version of Mouse, to an extent, because it is this semi-autobiographical accounting of a boy who was involved in the bombing and only survived because he happened to be standing next to a concrete wall, and the person that he's talking to is killed, and then it's his life after that. And it was very interesting because the whole first book, almost the entirety of it, takes place before the bomb is dropped. So for me reading it, there was so much tension of like, when is this going to happen? But it's very educational in a way that we don't really see, I think, in large part because as Americans, it's kind of like, we dropped the bomb, the war was over, yay, we did it. And it's just like, no, there's so many people who lived in suffering for decades, who faced so much harassment and discrimination for decades. And on top of that, before the bomb was dropped, there was so much hatred and difficulty within the Japanese people as a whole. The author's father was like a protester. He didn't like what the Japanese government was doing. Of course, they didn't like the Americans either. They didn't like what the Americans were doing either, but they also didn't like what the Japanese government was doing. And it's interesting perspectives that we aren't typically taught. And so I strongly recommend Barefoot Gen for anybody who's looking to learn more about that period of time. It's by Keiji Nakazawa. Reading all of these is a very interesting and eclectic mix. I've also been trying to read some more queer manga in there as well, and because that's kind of few and far between, and trying to think of things, look at things with like a critical eye, which I don't always do. So yeah, that's my that's my. And I think I haven't even like talked about all of the manga that I've been reading over the last few months because I've just been like saturating myself with it. I think that manga gets a bad rap because it's comics that's seen for kids and whatever. But I do believe that there's series out there for everybody. I genuinely believe that just like there's a book out there for everyone, I do believe that there's a manga out there for everybody. If you ever want to try one, hit me up. I probably have at least 5 suggestions for you.
Shall I be a Debbie Downer at the end of this while I talk about suicide?
I mean, I don't know. Do you want me to give you facts about Hiroshima?
I'm good. Thanks. I've had my daily dose of history. So I am going to talk about Coup de Grace by SofiaAjram. This was the winner of the Bram Stoker Award like last year or the year before. I picked it up around then because of the award that it got. It is liminal horror, so if folks have heard about the movie The Backrooms that's been really popular right now, that style of horror, which is all around like a normal-ish place clipping outside of reality into like a weird, messed up, never-ending, empty version of that. So Backrooms is about like clipping out of a department store into what looks like just a big empty office building with like the horrible fluorescent lights and never-ending rooms full of weird stuff that shouldn't be there or is like a little bit wrong. This one takes place in a subway that's a liminal space, so it constantly through tiled corridors and weird little shops and kiosks and vending machines and things like that that aren't in a way that is normal or natural. The book opens up with our protagonist saying, I have bad news for you. I've decided to kill myself. That character is literally getting on the subway in order to go commit suicide in the Montreal River. He wants to walk into the water with his pockets full of stones and die that way. Instead of getting to do that, he gets trapped in this liminal subway space where he's walking on endlessly, and a bunch of horrific things happening, because in liminal horror you like walk into a room and the walls are all of the people who love you, but they're melting and dying or something, like that sort of thing. Like there's some very gross body horror stuff in this one, so if you're not comfortable with that, maybe not one for you. But the thing that I loved about this was the end of the book is choose your own adventure. The character breaks the fourth wall and says, I'm tired, I'm done with this, I want this choice out of my hands, what do I do now? And then it does the choose your own adventure. If I do this, turn to page whatever. If I do this, turn to page whatever, so on and so forth. And there are 3 choices for this character. The first choice is to reach out to a character they met in the very first scene, which is a person that just sat down with them on the subway and talked with them, and they ended up getting off the subway together briefly and having a hookup. And then that guy wrote his phone number on the back of his subway ticket and handed it to the guy who was going to commit suicide, and then they separated. So the first choice is call that guy. The second choice is to call himself, to like call his home phone number. If you choose to do that, he calls himself and leaves like an empty platitude on the voicemail. But at the end of that one, you have to go back to the beginning of the story and start over. Like not the very, very beginning, but like when he first enters the liminal subway space, and it tells you to restart the story from there. And then the third choice winds up with him committing suicide. And the thing that was so powerful to me was that if you, the reader, choose to do nothing and just read the book to completion, the character dies and commits suicide. So your passivity of just reading the book, you have essentially chosen not to help, and that character dies. In order for there to be a happy ending to this book, you have to stop reading before it gets to that point. And the poignancy of that, of like, this is the way for the character to survive the story, is to reach out to someone for help, and for you to choose to help and choose to stop reading and accept that as the end of the story, and choosing not to, like, the poignancy of that as like this book being an allegory for long-term depression and suicide. So there is a choice of and also that is reflected in the fact that the choice that saves him is reaching out to a person that he met in his lowest moment, from a moment of serendipity. The coup de grace, so to speak, of a person who just shows up literally when he has already made the decision to die and is intervening and handing him a subway ticket to leave the subway. He, like, that's the layers of I loved it. And then on Goodreads, it has less than a 3-star rating. And I'm so mad about it. And part of me wonders if that's because it broke containment, so to speak. Like, I'm not sure this would be as poignant for everybody. And when a book like this wins an award, people who wouldn't normally gravitate to this type of story are going to read it.
Right.
Which is part of it. So then they're going to be like, and then it turned into like a choose your own adventure book at the end. I don't get it. Like, I understand that, but at the same time, I'm like, you don't get it though. Like, you aren't getting it. The second complaint that I'm seeing a lot is that people were complaining about the prose. There were people saying that it sounded like the author, like, had a thesaurus open on their desk, and I did not have that experience. I have had that experience where you're reading a book and most of the language is one way, and then every once in a while they're throwing in 7-letter words, and you're like, the rest of this doesn't make sense with this one word that you're throwing in. You're just found a replacement for a word. It could be considered purple prose for some people, but again, this is in the head of a person who is suicidal, and I feel like the rumination and like abstraction that is happening in the language is symptomatic of someone who is fighting suicide his entire life. Like, there is an element of being trapped in your own head and trying to find the language to communicate the things you are feeling, to the point of getting more and more and more specific with your language. If you are a person who does not understand the words that are on the page, that could be frustrating. I also understand that as, like, someone who picks this up who doesn't normally read literary works or works that use this level of language might have a hard time with this one. So I can also see that causing problems. Again, winning an award, breaking containment in that way. But again, I tabbed this all to hell. I don't know if you could see it because of the things. Like, the language is beautiful. The construction is beautiful. The themes are well done, in my opinion. And it's a debut book, which is crazy to me that somebody, like, this is their first book and they're able to do something to this scale. I loved it. If you've been hemming and hawing over picking it up, give it a try. I know it's not for everyone because the star rating on there clearly says that it's not, but for me it was great. I gave it 5 stars. I had, like, some issues with pacing sometimes, but it's so short that, like, whatever. Like, the rest of that shined so brightly that, like, my couple of issues between a couple scene transitions is negligible at this point. So highly recommended from me. Obviously, it is about suicide and there's self-harm themes and things like that. So if that's something that's difficult for you, maybe don't pick it up. It does the thing at the beginning in the acknowledgments of like listing the suicide hotline. If you or anyone you know is ever in that position, that's listed there. But yeah, I loved it and would like more people to read it and like it as well, even though clearly a lot of people have read it and not liked it. Oh well. It's a good one. Highly recommended. And it's queer. The author is, I want to say possibly gender fluid. She uses he/she pronouns, so depending on the day or how they're presenting that day, they use different pronouns. So that's cool. Not a lot of that representation out there, and the protagonist is gay as well. So if you're looking for like a queer horror book, this is another one of those as well.
Yeah. One of my favorite experiences is when you as the reader get to discover or feel something at the same time that the character does.
Yes.
And like that's why I love Piranesi by Susanna Clarke so much, because you get to experience what's happening with the protagonist. And to me, this sounds like a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Of like bringing the reader in a way that gives like enough of a shock that it sticks with you. And like I don't understand how people couldn't be just jazzed about that. Like, how could you not be so excited for like a book that does something that I've not heard any other book do, except for books that are like that from the beginning? Like,
yeah, it's weird, but in a good way, and it's doing a thing I love in books where it's breaking the rules of books, but for a reason, and it works in the end. It's hard to do, but it does work in the end for this one, at least in my opinion.
Michaela, this is just a question from someone who doesn't do, horror per se. You've prescribed some things, and I've gone, oh my God, I love this, and then, but it's not someplace I'll go. I mean, the description of the book and how it works, I would love to not be completely freaked out by the horror. But on the other hand, I think I might read it anyway, just because I don't think anything you've recommended to me, I've not walked away with like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But this one sounds like one of those, like the book in itself, the construct of it just sounds absolutely like oh my God.
Yeah.
You created a book that's essentially a teachable, it's like a teachable moment. There is something you can do, and doing nothing is welcome to what humans shouldn't do. But
yeah, there definitely are scenes in here that would be uncomfortable, I think, for people who don't read horror. Like I said, there's some body horror things, which if you didn't know is like gross things happening to people's bodies.
I know. Wait.
So there's that. There's a couple of scenes with like ghost type creatures that are dangerous. So like it's definitely has horror things, which I didn't super touch on. So it maybe don't read it at night if you're not a horror person. Maybe is what I would go with, because then you might not be able to sleep. Or read it and then have your romance book there that you can pick up and feel a little bit better afterwards.
My library of
Yes.
But I mean, again, there's so many things you can learn talking to people who do something sort of as their or as the norm of the moment that you can learn. And books do that.
Yeah.
And this just I mean, to me, it just, as a construct of a story, I mean, it just sounds absolutely brilliant. And the topic, clearly, for whatever reason, the various books that I've been down that are, down the mortality, venue, it's like, haven't come across one like this before. So,
it's
But
Very
thank you,
unique.
as always.
I mean, and I'm sure it is kind of what you were saying about like books that break containment, because I think books like that are essentially like, I would say, kind of experimental fiction, like doing that thing that is unexpected. First of all, you have to deal with people being confronted with that choice if they understand it, and being like, oh, I didn't want to be implicated in this.
Yeah.
Like, and being uncomfortable with that, and therefore, but that's even if like they get that far to the understanding. And I don't mean in the way that like people are like, oh my God, like literacy is dead and people don't, that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
I just mean of like, if you weren't expecting that and it was rolling along, like it can kind of just be like that dissonance in your brain of like, oh, I wasn't like ready to deal with this and like the way that it's presented, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yes.
Because I think like, you know, as we've done throughout this channel, it randomly happened in one of my Discord conversations the other day. I don't know why. Oh, someone mentioned, like, I mentioned David Foster Wallace and no one in the chat knew who that was, and I was like, well, that's the guy with like the footnotes.
Yep.
And then for some reason I got onto like a shtick about postmodernist writing, and I was going back to some of our really old bibliomancy episodes where we like did the book where someone took a book that already existed and like took the words out, so it was like a die cut book. Or like the J.M. Kutsaya book that I've read that is technically 3 narratives going along at once. Right. And I was just thinking about those, and like those are 2 pieces of experimental fiction where you know it's experimental from the jump. Yep. And so like you can either like decide to read it or wrap your mind around it and like kind of go. So I was kind of wondering if maybe that was some of the issue too, of like
it could be because it's not choose your own adventure from the beginning. So when you reach that point, some people might be like, why is this happening? Why is this character breaking? I mean, the character is talking to you, the reader, the whole time. Like, it starts out with, I have some bad news for you. I've decided to kill myself. Like that.
But that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, I think it's a really great idea, but I do think that, like, in some ways we read books for their predictability in certain ways, right? Because, like, it's the same reason that I love capital R romances, right? And that's comforting to me, even though I can guess the plot from the moment I read the description on the back of the book. Yep. Like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
And for the same reason that this was, like, we've talked about this a bunch about during COVID, a lot of people were either reading capital R romances or mysteries for the same reason, that even though they could be scary, someone was always going to solve the crime.
Yeah.
Or the
There's a
mystery
predictability in the way that it's going to end up, which horror has the opposite case of most of the time it's meant to make you uncomfortable. That's sort of the point of it in one way or another, depending on the type of horror that it is. It's always meant to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I think it's making you feel uncomfortable, but it's not happening to you.
To you.
Like, it's not implicating you. And I think that's maybe a difference. I don't know. I'm fascinated. As you know, I don't do body horror.
True.
This is a no-go zone for my brain. There are pieces of body horror media that I have unintentionally consumed throughout my life that, like, I did at, like, 10 years old that I still have nightmares about. They
Listen, I get it. There's an episode of Fringe that haunts me forever. So, I get it.
But no, I really, and I just want to say, like, you know, everyone in this chat knows this, but obviously, like, I really respect your opinion on books and, like, how you think about prose and stuff. So if you're saying, like, it was really well done, I'm just like, well, clearly other people didn't get it.
I am the foremost authority. Everyone else is wrong.
Listen, we've been doing this for 10 years. I think by now I've got a lead on, like, what you call good and, like, how you evaluate books and stuff.
In a similar way to the way that I like Patrick Rothfuss and the way that Rothfuss does language.
Right.
I finished this one and went back to the beginning, and there's things that happen at the end of the book that affect the beginning of the narrative, but you don't know it until you finish the book. So if you did do the path where you have to restart, the things that he does at the end actually did do stuff at the beginning. And I'm like, I love when authors do that, and you can, like, reread it, and there's more layers and context built into the text that at first you just kind of walk by, and the second time you read it, you're like, I see what you did there. So yes, yeah, it's one that I really liked. I hope this author puts out more stuff, even though clearly some folks had issues with it. I hope they didn't get discouraged by the rating on that one, because I mean they did still win that Bram Stoker award, so like,
yeah,
there was people in the community that clearly saw the potential and the value of this book. So
right. Well, I think we need to get a short of you that we can stick somewhere talking about this book so that it gets traction. I don't know how to make this happen, but it seems to be something that's possible in some machinations of some technology.
Oh, I mean,
so.
Michaela makes shorts out of our videos all the time.
Yeah.
Except for they're usually
not me.
Not me. Because I'm making, well, it's either, so far it's usually been me or Erica from Nevada, not to be confused with Erica who is here currently.
Yeah.
Screaming about
something.
All I can think about now is the dragon, and that's just like living rent free in my head.
One of our best shorts. Highly recommend.
Just saying, to me, it feels like a book that people need to reconsider if they, didn't appreciate it. It just sounds like one of those. And like I said, Michaela, you've recommended other things that I've tried, and my little brain sort of slightly exploded. It goes, well,
interesting.
There's a whole other venue I probably won't learn a whole lot about because I don't know how to go down it, but maybe someday I'll decide to follow this path. But that was just brilliant. So, thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to do that. I like when I get to recommend something I really enjoyed and talk about it. It feels good.
No, it sounds, to me as the, someone who does love language, this just sounds absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
I do think this is one of the rare episodes where everybody brought something they liked. And usually I will say a lot of the times it's me up front going, I read this nonfiction book and I have questions. So we are very excited because Anne and Erica are picking like the last set of books before we get to our final showdown for our bracket. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can go back to our Buddy Reading Challenge announcement video where we announce what we're doing. We've literally went through every single past reading roundtable that was before 2026, and we picked books that we put into a bracket for each of us, and we're having roundtable participants decide on which books to read. So in July, that reading roundtable, which is otherwise unthemed, will be picking the book that Michaela and I will read. So this is our last stop before that. And so we are very excited for Anne and Erica to announce which books are moving forward to the final. So Anne, do you want to start?
Yes, we are, for Michaela, Erica and I decided to move Super Gay Poems forward because I just like poetry. I've enjoyed talking about it. Here I always, I don't know that anybody is as interested, but I'm also wanting to hear Michaela talk about poetry. It's not a typical, it's harder to talk about, but I love the title, and I love, hearing intelligent women talk about books. So thank you. I can't wait.
And for Gretchen, we have chosen Highly Suspicious and Unfairly Cute by Talia Hibbert because variety is the spice of life, and Michaela's already reading Legends and Lattes.
So, what this means, if you aren't following along with where we've been posting our bracket or anything like that, I don't think we've actually posted it in a while because life is hard. Don't worry about it, but you should follow us on social media anyway. It'll probably be there eventually. So the finalists that will be decided in July, our July participants will be choosing between Super Gay Poems from Michaela and Legends and Lattes. So either Super Gay Poems or Cozy Romantasy.
Yep.
Fascinating. And for me, it will either be the Talia Hibbert book or Personal Librarian. So either historical adult fiction or YA romance. Again, this has been super fun. It will be very different, and we'll see what our participants in July have to say for us. And that gives Michaela and I like 5 months to read them, which may or may not be enough time based on our current reading levels. But we're doing our best. So again, we would so like to thank Erica and Anne for joining us, for bringing these incredible, diverse, reads. We do not talk beforehand about what anyone is bringing to any of the episodes, but particularly Unthemed Chaos. It's kind of like, who knows? A lot of times I don't know what I'm going to talk about until we start filming. So it's always really fun to learn from all of these different things and different titles. And hopefully there was at least one of us that maybe had a book or 2 or 3 or 10, if you're Erica and Anne, that you want to pick up and potentially add to your own list. Because again, this was one of those ones where everybody brought at least one thing that they liked. So there's a broad category there to pick from. In July, outside of the bracket of this is now going to go up in July. It was supposed to be June. So don't worry about it. It's fine. The actual planned July episode, which will come up at the end of the month, is also unthemed. We're choosing to stagger we usually go either of or for themes. We're just choosing to make that one unthemed so that we can do the bracket, and also because we are very, very excited that in August we will be celebrating Women in Translation Month. So more on that. We'll talk about that more in July and everything, when it's actually July. It's not July for us yet. But we will be doing a themed episode celebrating that month, which, as you know, here at Betwixt the Books, we always have translated fiction in some way on our buddy reading challenge. And this year we decided to bring everybody into the party. So we're very excited to do that. So a little spoiler. Will you see us before then? We don't know. Life is really hard right now. It's really hot out there. Take care of yourself. If you're reading, if you're listening, if it's podcasts, whatever it is, all of it is good as long as it makes you happy. So we will be back with more unthemed chaos of other things that we are engaging with because, well, when we started, we thought they'd make us happy. Maybe not by the end. But we'll be back for that, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys!